recording this on Monday, and if you woke up Monday morning and saw a tweet on your timeline about Chicago being approved for a Formula One race, I have some bad news.
Mhm.
As far as every reporter in Formula One knows, that is not true. But it does seem like a potential Chicago race could still be in the works for Formula one day in the future. So, how do we feel about the United States getting potentially a fourth race, potentially a race in Chicago, and potentially another street circuit race stateside?
Ooh, I think this is a really interesting situation because the United States is so saturated with Formula One races right now. And Formula One race, like Formula One is just historically a sport that goes to one country at a time. And if you get two races, it's a huge deal. We now have three. To have a fourth would be so many F1 races. Do I think the attendance would be fantastic and everything would be great? Yeah, but long term, I don't know about oversaturating. I'm just not one of those people who looks at the numbers and can tell you if that's a good idea.
I do think in a Chicago race long term, and talk about stages, about the canvas or the backdrop, that to me is the logical place because it's huge. You can get around Chicago fairly easily. Don't talk about the Dan Ryan, Jessica. Okay, don't talk about specifics.
uh,
I just mean logistically,
Jane
it
Byrne
can be done.
interchange.
If we stage a race in Miami every year, we can stage a race in Chicago. It's it's an easier proposition, and it also looks really cool. I think it has the best visuals of any city, and it already has the proof of concept in the form of the NASCAR race and in form of IndyCar races that have happened there. Chicago is the place I think where F1 would have to go. That's option one if they have to go. Nate Saunders says, of course, this is anything but a done deal. And if Nate says it, that is close friend of of Ed Sheeran, Nate Saunders, then it has to be true. Okay. Not just because he's friends with a famous person now, but because he knows what he's talking about. So it makes sense to me when you talk about saturating the market. It's very strange to me because I was kind of running the numbers in my head and realized that the United States, which is not the world's largest nation, would at that point have four Formula One races, and that the two largest countries by population in the world would combined have one. That's it, with India having zero. That's just, if you want to know how the numbers work and why maybe you shouldn't watch those numbers in particular, that's why. I would worry that it would come at the expense of Coda, because Coda to me is the best circuit in the Americas. It is the best pure racing experience. I think it is the best spectator experience. And it is also the one that kind of has a hard time selling itself beyond the hardcore racing audience that F1 already owns. Is that, I mean, Alanis, Jessica, does that seem accurate?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I think it would be unfortunate to lose Coda if that ever happened. And we were in danger of losing Coda for a while before Formula One's giant boom in the United States. There were years of just torrential rains and flooding during the race weekend. And that led people to be really mad about the lack of success the F1 race had. And government officials were like, we don't want to continue supporting this with our tax dollars. We want to just be done with this. So we were at risk of losing Coda like 10 years ago. And I think Coda is a really, really good circuit, but you're right. It is for the more hardcore people.
Yeah, I mean, I see the ratings that the Formula One race in Miami got this past weekend, and it had the largest US audience for a Formula One race to date with over 3 million viewers, and it peaked around like 3.5 million viewers. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, like, I hate ratings talk. It is not anything that is that interesting, but I think it speaks to the audience that Formula One wants to tap into. And if they can put more races on the Eastern or Central time zone in the United States and get those numbers, it's obviously they'll get more money for the TV product. They'll get more money in sponsorships and branding and everything like that. And so it purely becomes, I think, a numbers game. And like you said, I think the attendance would crush. So wouldn't surprise me if it happened, but I'm with you, Alanis. I would be worried that it would be, instead of a race in Austin and not in addition to, and we'd end up with a situation where a lot of racing fans' favorite American race no longer happens because we're creating this new thing in Chicago, which could be really cool.
I also think there's a very interesting PR angle to oversaturating yourself. We see with celebrities who have been in the public eye for many decades and very, very popular for many decades, you have to kind of wait for them to give you pieces of themselves, wait for them to give you content, photos, videos, all kinds of stuff like that. It keeps them in demand. Someone like Beyonce, I feel like I see her occasionally, and when you do, it's a big deal. And I think there's been a discussion online recently, especially with all of the talk about Taylor Swift, Eras Tour, all of that. There's a lot of Taylor Swift right now. And so it gives people more leeway to start criticizing, feel like there's too much out there, whereas with someone like Beyonce, who you see less of, when people see her, they're like, wow, that's so exciting. It's very unanimously excited. So when you oversaturate yourself, you open yourself up to more criticism and people thinking about you more in a critical way, whereas just being excited to see you. So I think there is kind of a case study there of too much Formula One could lead people to be very critical of Formula One.
It's just a wild spot to be in, given how Formula One was agnostic to completely cold to the United States for the better part of 40 years. And now there is a potential of having 4, not North American races, 4 United States races in the same calendar. That is bonkers.